Have you ever wondered if our obsession with material success is actually a trap? A deception crafted to keep us blind to what truly matters? Studies have shown that the pursuit of wealth and possessions rarely leads to lasting happiness. And yet, many of us are constantly driven by this very pursuit, unknowingly losing sight of something far more profound. In this video, we'll reveal how the devil, known as the father of lies, skillfully manipulates us into valuing the temporary over the eternal, using subtle, everyday distractions to draw us away from a life of true purpose. Are you ready to uncover the truth and break free from this cycle? If this resonates with you, don't leave without joining us on this journey to real insight. Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss any of our deep dives into topics that challenge and inspire. Share this with someone who needs a fresh perspective on life's true purpose, and let's uncover the truth together. In the Bible, Jesus describes the devil as the father of lies in John 8:44, a title that captures his role as the ultimate deceiver. He isn't just an enemy in the physical sense. He operates through the art of deception, subtly leading humanity away from the truth. Unlike overt temptations, these deceptions are often crafted in ways that appear harmless, almost invisible, yet their effect is profound. They shift our focus from the eternal to the temporary, from what matters most to what is fleeting. This concept of the father of lies suggests that the devil's primary weapon is manipulation. He doesn't necessarily force us to choose the temporary over the eternal. Instead, he blinds us to the reality of eternity, guiding our attention to what we can see, touch, and possess in this world. His lies aren't obvious, which makes them even more dangerous. They're often small, subtle shifts in perspective, nudging us toward believing that what we have here and now is all that matters. It's this gentle redirection that takes us farther from our spiritual purpose, away from the truth and into a life focused on immediate rewards. This foundation is vital for understanding how deception works. The devil isn't a mere antagonist. He's a strategic master who understands human nature, our desires, and our weaknesses. He understands how to exploit these, whispering lies that sound like truths, feeding the belief that fulfillment lies in wealth, success, and comfort. By doing so, he keeps us bound to the physical, never looking beyond the horizon to the eternal. As we dive deeper, this video will uncover how these deceptions affect our everyday lives, keeping us tied to things that are temporary. Imagine a life where the choices we make are based on what feels immediate rather than what holds eternal significance. These are the devil's tactics, distractions that keep us in a cycle of pursuit, constantly reaching for satisfaction in things that fade. But by understanding the nature of these lies, we can begin to recognize them for what they are: clever distractions designed to divert us from the truth, leading us further from a life with purpose and eternal meaning. Let's examine how these subtle influences shape our worldview and uncover ways to guard ourselves from being led astray by the father of lies. To truly understand the dangers of living for material pursuits, we need only look at the parable of the rich fool, a story Jesus tells in Luke 12:13-22. In this parable, a wealthy man finds himself with an abundance of crops, so much so that he doesn't have enough space to store them all. Instead of considering how he might share his surplus or use it for a greater purpose, he chooses to tear down his barns to build even larger ones, storing away his wealth to live comfortably for years to come. His vision is fixed on a life of ease, planning to take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry, assuming he has secured his future. But as the story unfolds, God speaks to him and says, "You fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself?" In a moment, the rich man's plans are rendered meaningless as his life comes to an abrupt end. His wealth, his careful planning, his comforts, all of it was for nothing. This parable illustrates a hard truth. Material possessions and earthly wealth hold no lasting value. They can be taken from us in an instant, and they provide no security when it comes to our eternal destiny. This story serves as a mirror, urging us to reflect on our own lives. How often are we so consumed by our possessions, by our drive to accumulate more, that we forget what truly matters? Are we, like the rich fool, building our own barns, storing up treasures here on earth without considering the fleeting nature of it all? While we may believe we're securing our lives, the reality is that none of this wealth, success, or comfort will follow us beyond this life. Jesus ends this parable with a powerful statement. This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich toward God. He draws a clear line between living for temporary gains and living for eternal purpose. The rich fool teaches us that focusing on material wealth without regard for our spiritual lives is a tragic mistake. As we continue, let this parable be a reminder to question our own intentions, to look beyond our desire for comfort and security, and to seek something far more lasting. Are we too being blinded by the allure of possessions, forgetting that our lives are but a moment in eternity? In today's world, materialism has become a norm, a silent trap that holds people captive without them even realizing it. The Bible warns us of this danger in 2 Corinthians 4:4, where it says that the God of this world has blinded the minds of the unbelievers to keep them from seeing the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ. This blinding effect is a powerful tool, as it causes people to become absorbed in the here and now, focusing only on what can be seen, touched, or achieved in this life. It's a tactic that keeps humanity from seeing the bigger picture, from realizing that there is something beyond the immediate, beyond the material. Think about the culture of consumption that surrounds us. Every day we're bombarded with messages telling us we need the latest gadgets, the trendiest clothes, and the biggest houses. During the holiday season, for instance, we're encouraged to spend without limits, to express love through possessions, and to measure success by what we own. Luxury items, social media pressures, and the constant push for more keep people locked into a cycle of comparison, always feeling they need just a little more to feel complete. This culture doesn't just encourage material attachment, it normalizes it, making it seem as though a life centered on possessions is the ultimate goal. But as the Bible shows us, this pursuit of material things creates a false sense of security. Material possessions can be lost, destroyed, or taken away. Yet society teaches us to place our confidence in them, to believe that they are what will make us happy, successful, or respected. This is one of the devil's most effective deceptions, convincing people that their worth, purpose, and peace lie in things that are temporary, instead of in what is eternal. When we begin to see through this illusion, we understand that materialism is a trap, a way to keep us grounded in things that ultimately don't matter. The more we pursue this kind of security, the more we become attached to things that won't last, the farther we drift from a life rooted in spiritual purpose. It's a distraction, one that diverts our attention from our deeper, truer needs. As we continue, ask yourself, what are the things in my life that I might be relying on as a source of security? Are they truly satisfying, or are they pulling me into a false sense of peace? Recognizing this trap is the first step toward freeing ourselves from it, allowing us to seek fulfillment in something that truly lasts. There's a common mindset many of us fall into, the idea that we have plenty of time to think about spiritual matters. I'll focus on my faith tomorrow, we tell ourselves, or I'll seek God when I'm older, when life slows down. But as Paul warns in 2 Corinthians 6:2, now is the day of salvation. This scripture reminds us that the present moment is the only guarantee we have. And yet, one of the devil's most effective tactics is convincing us to keep putting off what matters most, to believe that there's always time later to align ourselves with God. This deception of delay keeps people in a cycle of spiritual procrastination. Life is full of distractions: careers, family obligations, social commitments, and personal goals. These things often feel urgent, and so we push spiritual priorities to the back burner, thinking they can wait. But the truth is, none of us are promised tomorrow. Every day we delay, we risk missing out on the deeper purpose and connection that God offers us in the here and now. The devil thrives on this delay tactic, because as long as we're putting off our spiritual life, we're staying in his trap. Imagine a life where we constantly believe we'll have time later. It's like living on borrowed time, assuming that when everything else is in place, when we're finally ready, we'll make time for faith. But the danger of this mindset is that tomorrow rarely comes. There's always something else to focus on, another reason to delay, until suddenly we find that years have passed and we've never made the commitment we intended. This deception is designed to keep us in a loop, so that we never step into the purpose that God has for us. As we reflect on this, consider the urgency in Paul's words. Now is the time. This isn't about scaring anyone, but rather about waking up to the reality that life is fragile. We don't know what the future holds, and every moment we have is an opportunity to live in alignment with God's purpose. Breaking free from spiritual procrastination is about recognizing that today is the only time we truly have. It's an invitation to embrace the present, to seek truth, and to live with intention. As we move forward, let this reminder linger. Are we living with purpose now, or are we waiting for a perfect time that may never come? Embracing the present is a powerful step toward freeing ourselves from the illusion of delay. In our world today, sin and materialism are no longer just common. They're celebrated, marketed, and woven into the fabric of our daily lives. The Bible gives us a powerful warning in 1 John 2:16, which says, "For everything in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, comes not from the Father, but from the world." This scripture highlights how worldly values often glorify what is fleeting, superficial, and ultimately harmful to our spiritual well-being. The devil's influence can be seen in how society elevates wealth, pleasure, and self-centered success as the highest ideals. Consider how today's media, music, and movies portray the good life. From glamorous images of endless parties, wealth, and luxury to lyrics that promote indulgence, pride, and power, our culture sends a clear message. Life's primary goal is self-gratification. This normalization of sin makes it easy to forget or even ignore the consequences. The devil's tactic here is simple but effective. By making sin feel normal, even desirable, he distracts us from its destructive effects on our lives and our spiritual path. When society repeatedly presents these images, they begin to shape our values and desires, pulling us further from God. This isn't just about obvious sins either. It's about how pride, envy, and the constant need for validation have become standard aspects of modern life. Social media, for example, can fuel a culture of comparison and self-promotion, subtly feeding our pride and leading us to focus on superficial aspects of ourselves. We're encouraged to chase after likes, followers, and fame, all while losing sight of humility, contentment, and the spiritual depth that God calls us to seek. The danger lies in how easily these values seep into our lives, making it difficult to distinguish between what's cultural and what's truly valuable. Over time, we might begin to accept these distorted values as truth, allowing them to shape our actions, beliefs, and priorities. When sin is normalized, it becomes harder to recognize it, let alone resist it. This is the power of the devil's deception. He hides in the subtle shifts in our worldview, slowly replacing eternal truths with temporary desires. As we examine these influences, let's ask ourselves, are we aligning our lives with the eternal values that God teaches, or are we being swept up in the tide of a culture that glorifies what is temporary and superficial? Recognizing the normalization of sin is the first step in reclaiming our lives, focusing once more on what is lasting and true. As we continue exploring how deception operates in our world, we enter into a deeper prophetic perspective, the role of the spirit of the Antichrist in the Bible. The Bible speaks of an impending time of ultimate deception, a global movement that will blur the lines between good and evil, truth and falsehood. The spirit of the Antichrist, as mentioned in the New Testament, is not just about a single figure but a force, an influence that works to prepare the world for the ultimate deception. This influence operates by gradually eroding moral foundations and spiritual discernment, preparing humanity to accept falsehood as truth. This eschatological theme suggests that society's values are being reshaped to welcome a worldview that opposes God's truth. The devil's tactics have a goal: to bring people to a point where they no longer recognize or value righteousness, creating an environment ripe for deception. This influence works through culture, politics, media, and even ideologies that distort the concept of right and wrong, making everything appear relative and subjective. The result is a society that is increasingly disconnected from objective truth, leaving individuals vulnerable to falsehoods presented as enlightenment or progress. Consider how today's culture often portrays evil as good and good as evil. The constant redefinition of values, what is acceptable, what is celebrated, what is condemned, isn't random. It aligns with this spirit of deception, setting the stage for an era where ultimate falsehoods will be accepted as truth. In this context, we can see how the values being promoted today, wealth, power, and pleasure at any cost, are part of a larger narrative, one that encourages individuals to live without regard for spiritual consequences. This eschatological perspective invites us to reflect deeply. Are we preparing our hearts to stand firm in faith and discernment, or are we being swept along by a current that blurs truth? The Bible warns that a time will come when many will be deceived, believing they are following truth when, in fact, they are following a lie. It's a reminder that we need to be grounded, discerning, and vigilant, understanding that not everything presented as good aligns with God's truth. As we reflect on this theme, let's ask ourselves, are we allowing this subtle spirit of deception to influence our values and choices, or are we rooted in eternal truths? In recognizing these influences, we can begin to live with a higher level of awareness, discerning truth from falsehood, and standing strong in a world that increasingly values the opposite. As we come to the end of this journey, the most important question remains: what will we do with the truth we've uncovered? It's one thing to recognize deception and understand the dangers of a materialistic and fleeting life, but it's another to take intentional steps toward a life aligned with God's purpose. The Bible reminds us of the brevity of life in Hebrews 9:27. It is appointed for man to die once, and after that comes judgment. This verse is a call to reflection, urging us to live with a sense of urgency and purpose, to break free from the illusions of this world, and seek a life dedicated to what truly matters. If you're feeling the weight of this message, it's not a coincidence. Now is the time to examine our lives, to consider whether we're truly living with eternity in mind or merely going through the motions. It's easy to get lost in the pursuit of wealth, comfort, and temporary pleasure, But each day spent focused only on these things is a day lost in the grand scheme of our eternal journey. The devil's greatest tactic is to keep us entangled in what doesn't matter, to make us believe that fulfillment can be found in things that ultimately leave us empty. But there's hope and purpose waiting for anyone willing to look beyond these illusions. It's possible to break free, to seek truth, and to live with a heart aligned toward God. Embracing a life with eternal purpose means letting go of the false promises of materialism and grounding ourselves in a relationship with God. It's about understanding that life's meaning doesn't come from what we own or achieve, but from who we are in our faith. If you're feeling trapped by the world's distractions, remember that there's another path, a path of truth, of clarity, and of true purpose. God is calling us to live a life with meaning beyond the temporary. Today, take a moment to reflect on what truly matters, to reassess your priorities, and to seek a purpose that is not only fulfilling but everlasting. Don't wait for tomorrow. The time to live intentionally is now. Are you ready to step out of the illusions and into a life of purpose in God? This is the invitation, to see beyond the deception, to live with intention, and to secure your life in something eternal. As we close this journey, let's take a moment to reflect on everything we've uncovered. We live in a world filled with distractions, materialism, societal pressures, and cultural values that steer us away from what truly matters. The devil's deceptions are subtle yet powerful, making us chase what is temporary, while the eternal slips through our fingers. We've seen how easy it is to become consumed by what's in front of us, to let our hearts become entangled in a cycle that ultimately leads us away from our true purpose. The Bible calls us to live with clarity, to recognize the traps laid before us, and to choose a life that aligns with God's values rather than the world's illusions. Remember, everything we accumulate in this life, our possessions, our accolades, our comforts, will one day be left behind. But what we build in our relationship with God, the legacy of faith and love that we nurture, is eternal. These are the treasures that no one can take from us, that stand beyond time and outlast every earthly gain. So, as we part ways in this video, let's ask ourselves, what kind of life are we building? Are we pouring ourselves into things that are temporary, or are we investing in what lasts? Each choice we make, each moment we spend, is an opportunity to draw closer to a purpose that isn't just satisfying today but holds meaning in eternity. If you feel a stirring in your heart, a call to look beyond the surface and live with a deeper purpose, don't ignore it. This isn't just about changing our actions. It's about transforming the way we see life, shifting our focus from what fades to what endures. The path isn't always easy, but it's one of true fulfillment, leading us closer to God and the purpose He has for each of us. If this message resonated with you, don't let it be just another thought that fades away. Take a step of faith today, whether it's through prayer, reconnecting with God, or making a conscious decision to focus on eternal values. Start small, but start today. Share this video with someone who might need it, and together, let's build a community focused on what truly matters. And if you haven't already, subscribe to our channel for more content that inspires and challenges you to live a life of purpose. Remember, we're on this journey together, seeking truth and clarity in a world of distractions. Thank you for watching, and let's commit to a life anchored in what lasts, anchored in God. Thank you for joining us on this journey. May we all seek to live with hearts directed toward God, unshaken by the distractions around us. Because in the end, when everything else falls away, it is only our spiritual foundation that remains. So, take this moment to commit to a life of clarity, purpose, and eternal significance. A life that goes beyond this world. anchored in the eternal truths that never fade.